when it was reported back in, I don't know when, 2010 or 2011, that the decisions that Google could theoretically make about the order of its search results on political candidates could swing something like 10 or 15% of the world's elections, the liberal side of the argument didn't really care, because I think they assumed they'd always swing them in their direction.
Yeah.
And now they've suddenly realized, especially in the last year, since Elon Musk took over X, that that's not a given at all. And now it's kind of a bit late to start doing anything about it. So they're racing to catch up, and the EU Commission's demanding Musk hands over information about the algorithm. That should have already been in place as a law 10 years ago. And then it would have been established for now, and we'd be like, oh, you know how this works.
Yeah.
You got to basically show us how your algorithms work. That's how we do things around here, rather than, oh my God, the right wing are doing incredibly well. We need to quickly do something about it.
Yeah.
Because it also then loses some legitimacy. Yeah. It makes it political rather than it's about this whole system. So it's, I don't know, I don't want to be too like, oh, I complained about this in 2012 and not this. Who wants to hear that? We are where we are, but it is a source of frustration. And I think the message I always try to get out there is, don't just blame the guys you disagree with. Don't just blame the radical right. Or think, what about the whole system? Am I also part of the problem? Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, those of us who, well, not me, because I really avoid this, but the people on the left who steam into really, really angry online arguments, stop for a second and think, am I helping? Or am I just stirring the pot more here and getting everyone angrier?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think quite a lot of the time the answer is they're making a lot of people angrier. And I think the point you've made there about think about what will happen when people who you disagree with have this power is a really, really fantastic way to put it. And I mean, I've been making this argument since people were calling for any sort of censorship of social media or regulation of it. And I'm like, okay, but just like think about what happens when those levers to control what a society sees are in the hands of someone that you don't like. Like, if you're a big Corbyn fan and you're horrified by the potential of Prime Minister Nigel Farage, what happens when he has that kind of sway? Like, would you be as comfortable with his government doing it as like the current administration, or like a Jeremy Corbyn administration, or
100%. Like, no one seems to realize that. And the entire sort of logic of free expression, for example, is actually to sort of protect minority opinion. You lose that power, and the majority starts to enforce their will on the minority. That's what free expression is really about. And people sometimes, I don't know, don't seem to understand that free expression is there to protect that. And I'm staggered that people don't think more as well about this question when it comes to data and privacy. If you hand over too much data to the government or to large companies all the time, what happens in 30 years' time from now, when we are much older than we are today? And who knows who might be elected in 30 years' time? God knows, given what's going on at the moment and how quickly things are changing. What happens if they have access to absolutely vast amounts of data about every single thing of our lives and our children's lives, and they start seeking out like little signs of disloyalty towards the regime? Because who knows? And this is the story also of IBM in the Netherlands during the Nazis, building technology for one reason, for like various forms of collecting vast amounts of data for census reasons and stuff like that, including your ethnicity and your religion, falls into the hands of the Nazis, who then have a database of every Jew and where they live. And then I know it seems like a really exaggerated example, but I just think people don't always think about how fast politics can change. Yeah, and in what directions it can change.
Yeah, and we've seen it as well in, for example, people's dislike of Just Stop Oil has allowed the government to criminalize protest. That people's disagreement with one particular group has allowed the government to take away part of that fundamental right that we just forever would have, you go back 25 years and say, they're going to arrest protesters. You'd say, well, that sounds like a dictatorship to me. People's political opinions shouldn't sway the principle based on who it is that we're talking about. And I think this brings us really nicely to a quote that I sort of got out of the book. And you say, in some circles, it's become a patronizing new orthodoxy to say that stupid bros have been duped by misinformation. Do you think misinformation is better or worse than it was when you wrote that? And do you think we're better at spotting it, or do you think nothing's changed, or has it got worse?
That came from a view, and it is informed by some of the literature as well, that people who consider themselves to be sort of highly educated and well-informed are often as prone to satisfying, forms of information. They are just as likely to believe things that they want to believe. And all the other cognitive biases that we have, that there was this sense for sure that it was sort of, you idiots are just believing what the Russian bots are saying without any sort of introspection about maybe I also believe stuff that just because it feels warm, because I like The Guardian, so I'll just trust what they say instead and think I'm really informed about it. I mean, but the reality is about something like fake news, which is one of the worst phrases ever created. And I know it's weirdly sort of created by, I don't know if Trump created it. I don't think he did, but he obviously popularized it. But then it was also used by everyone to accuse everybody else of being ill-informed or whatever. Most of the fake news that you think, it's not so much single stories that are fake. What tends to happen, and I spent several weeks and months with Tommy Robinson, following him all around Europe back in 2015 and 2016. A whole other book I wrote called Radicals, about different political movements that I felt were kind of bubbling up. And radical environmentalism, I shut down a coal mine with some radical sort of Earth First type movement. Traveled all across Europe with Tommy Robinson, but actually with him, on the planes with sitting next to him. And all sorts of other groups, psychedelic, mushroom takers, all of that. It's really cool, really interesting work. Most of the way that, let's say, the Tommy Robinsons of this world construct their view of what's going on is not just because they are reading false news stories. They will typically be reading truthful, accurate news stories from fairly trustworthy outlets, but they will be piling one on top of the other. So they'll create a narrative of the world based on sort of collating and bombarding themselves with the same version of what's going on in the world over and over again. But the actual stories themselves, read in isolation, are often correct.
Yeah.
But it's about how you construct that and whether you're seeing different views on what happened and alternative stories. The problem then is the minute you start saying it's fake, you just believe fake news, they can say, but that's from the BBC and this story's from Le Monde and that one's from the New York Times. So what's fake about that? Why are you patronizing me? So it's not about often fake news is not individually fake. It might create a slightly misleading narrative about what's happening, but that's quite different, and you talk about that differently in a non-patronizing, you just believe any old fake news. Now, things have got a bit muddier because, Elon Musk is just literally sharing completely false stories. But one of the things I have also noticed about that whole, I think what's going on at the moment is just the incredible power of anecdotes and videos of invasions and London's fallen and all these sort of tropes that get added to that. Very often you will see a video of at the border or whatever it is. But what is added to that is London's border, civilization's under threat, and that gets shared, and you see it again and again and again and again. And that is partly, I think, the power of video. One of the things that isn't really discussed, the kind of meta trend, is how much more of our social content is video relative to text compared to 10 years ago. Like the majority of traffic now is video.
Yeah.
And video is way more emotive.
Short form as well.
Short videos, they're powerful, they're emotional. You get really angry when you see them in a way you don't reading the written word. And it's that single change, I think, has transformed politics to make it so much more emotive and angry. And, oh my God, look at these crazy people. You'll get a single video of, and I don't like to use these examples, but if you go onto X, you'll see them constantly. Libs of TikTok. Some kind of absolutely radical liberal with pink hair.
I had a craziest.
So you don't find the craziest people, and that's called nut picking, and make it appear that that is how every liberal thinks. Every liberal is happy to see biological men compete in women's sports. That's how crazy they all are.
Yeah.
But you attach that message to an emotive video, share it enough times, it starts to really sink in with people. And I think the right has done better than the left at caricaturing the opposition over the last 4 years. And I think video is a key way that's happened.
Do you want to win a signed copy of The People vs. Tech by Jamie Bartlett? Well, make sure you share this podcast somewhere publicly and put a link in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed and you'll be entered in the draw. Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.